Today I'm going to be talking about writing a story and taking all the ideas you have for characters and creatures and places and all these amazing ideas and putting it on one piece of paper and figuring out how all that's going to happen, where it's all going to fit, and just making sense of all these cool ideas that you might already have for your comic or your animation or your movie or your novel, whatever that might be. So the first thing I like to do, and I just do this in my sketchbook or on a piece of paper, is I create a timeline and then I create where the story is starting and where it's going. So first, I figure out what's the beginning of my story. So I always like to start with something that pulls the reader in. So in the beginning, I like to have some kind of like chaos or suspense or something that makes the reader want to read more of your story and see how it all ends. So this beginning, the chaos could be like a war scene, or the character might be running from something, or they could just be faced with a problem if it's not like an action story. So that's what I like to do with the start. And then for the ending, you can figure out whether you want the hero to rescue somebody, or if he saves the day, defeats the villain, whatever that might be. Figure out exactly where it is you want your hero to end on the last page of the book or the last chapter of your story. And after you've figured out the beginning and the end, then you can kind of figure out where everything else fits in. So what I like to do is create these lists on top of the timeline with my characters and places, creatures, and objects. And then sometimes what I like to do, if you have a ton of characters, this is probably a good idea to do. You can split your characters into two lists and have like your antagonists or your just role-playing characters, and then your protagonists or your villains. This is good for really complex stories with a ton of characters. You have a lot going on. You can split up your list a little bit. So once I've created this, then we'll have the antagonist. Obviously this would be specific to your stories. Places, I'll do a cave, because caves are pretty cool. For creatures, this would be your list of just whatever cool creatures you've come up with. A lot of times I come up with the creatures before I even write the story, just because I like to draw, and I have cool ideas for creatures before I even know what they're going to do or where they're going to fit in at. So for here, I know I want some zombies, and they can be part of the creatures. For objects, let's put walking stick and gems. And then for villains, I'll put Mad Professor. And then of course your list will keep filling down as you write your story and figure it out. So once you have everything, or at least most of what you want up at the top, you have your lists created, then you can kind of get an idea for what your story looks like. And you can start to fill in where these characters and places and objects are going to go. So right off the gate, we want our antagonist to be in the story. So whenever I fill in the places and the people and the objects, I put those below the timeline. So I can see everything I have up above it, and then below is where I start to fill in what the story looks like and get an idea for what is going to happen. So I have the antagonist in the first thing, and it's chaos, and let's say that he's in a city and there's zombies everywhere, so he has to escape. So let's make the second part escape, and we'll put zombies here. And so you can already kind of get an idea in your head of what it's going to look like. So you have this city, it's probably in ruins, and he's hiding and running away from these zombies. And you can already see that's what's taking place in the beginning of the story right there. Then a little bit longer, we'll say the antagonist meets friend. So this would be maybe your sidekick character, or just someone who helps your antagonist along the way. And we'll put this person right after the escape. So let's say your antagonist escapes the city, he finds this friend, or this friend waves him down, or maybe he saves the friend from something, and they get to talking, and you can share a backstory for either your antagonist or the secondary character, or maybe even both. And then it goes a little longer and you're like, oh, okay, I have this idea for a really cool cave environment, and you want to put that in maybe right here after that. So you can put cave, and maybe while your antagonist is in the cave, that's where he finds the gems, and you just continue to fill those out. And then maybe he gets out of the cave and he sells the gems to some merchant, or just trades them for some kind of good. Maybe he gets like a weapon, so he sells the gems and gets a sword of some kind. And you can see how the story just slowly starts to build itself out. And when you're doing this in your sketchbook, if you don't like anything, you can always scratch it out, erase it, and put something else. Maybe it's a slingshot or something instead. Or maybe it's not even a weapon, maybe he gets some other kind of object that helps him along in his story. And then you're like, okay, well, the main villain is going to be this mad professor, so we need to pull him in there. So it's going to be right here. Maybe he gets captured by the professor. And you just kind of fill this out in your sketchbook. And then whenever you're writing your story, creating your thumbnails, you can always flip back to this page in your sketchbook and have your whole story lined out. And then you can figure out like what happens with the villain. Does he kill him? Does he capture him? Does he put him in some sort of jail? How does he defeat him, or does the villain defeat him? Does he escape? Stuff like that. And then you fill in all these little slots, and eventually you get to this end scene that you created in the very beginning. But in the back of your head, you knew the whole time that as you were going through all these different stages and you're filling in all these different cool ideas that you have, that you're going to end up at this last spot. Whether it's the rescue, or the hero kills the villain, or they win the war, or whatever that might be, whatever your story is. So this method really has helped me take a lot of great ideas, a lot of cool concepts that I have, and put them in a timeline that clearly helps me tell the story, so that I don't just feel overwhelmed with all these characters and places and concepts that I've been sitting on but don't know what to do with. So hopefully, if you can try out this method by creating the beginning and the end, and then writing out all your characters, objects, places, creatures, all that, hopefully that'll help you fill in the rest of the spots on these timelines. Let me know in the comments below what stories you all are working on, or if you found a particular part of this video helpful or inspiring. Thanks for watching.